They only work when you watch.
Sweet good. Hi, Lori.
Hi, Lucy.
Tungasukuyivasi, tamasi tungasukuvasi. Udlutuinautillugu June 9, 2022. Udlumi uqaqtuuvunga Lucy Tulugarjuk, puraqtikinaaqtaqa Lori Idlout. Teema kimullerpaami katingallunuk tapuna uvagutku saqqiyaarunnuyoorannum. Ajuluuriartorsimakatasaarama saqqiyaakatasaangalluta udlutuinakkut. Takupillalorlugimit tarvimminunatsinni iglurimmin. Uyannami tamaane qatigiyunnarmigavinga ullumiuyo. Tungasuttiari uvaguttiiviikkut.
Qoyannami Lucy aksulluni igluringmiillunu takuutilau pillarauqannu ippillun ilagiyassillun nagligipassi isamagiinnaroorpassi suuqaimma naglingnermat neriungiyauyarpunga quviasuklungaru unnuksauyuq uqaqatigingniaqannu amissunu atiitoq tusaayauniarpugu
Ide tema aranini katiqattarsimagannu qakutikkut taassumanuluuyaap miksaanut taikkualu nunavumiilaaqikittaalummi uparorsimayut annasuktiin mittimatarimiuta kigarturorsimallugit amamaannauyoq tappani iklurjuami kigartuullutinunavuluktaami ullumile qanuilingalerpa tamanna tusartuunassunneriyaiminestumu taana angigligiartuuyimayo aqutikutaaksaq pichutikillugu
apeqqutitsiavallaarumi aperigavi qoyannami minister yuit mittimatarimiunungila tusartauyumagaruarmata tainna avatileriqqunnut unikkaaliariorortuq ilureqarluni piquyivungaarutinit qanuiquyingmangaat taitna nuruyaareriyikkut angigligiartittiyumaroortillugit piyainiartam uyaqarniarnerminik avatileriyikkut aakkaaquyilaurmata angigligiartittiquyilaungimmata taannaguuq maannauyoq pilerianguyoq taikanninuruyaarni naammaaningmaguo isimaaruuteqarmataguuq nunatsinni suqaksaikkanni tuinneriaqarninginnit inumninaaratjuumiyariaqarninginni amissunit pitchutiqarlutik aakkaaquyisimangmata taikkua aktortausimaraanguyut inuit soorlu angunasuttuleriyikkut piluarlugit tuksiqarauqaruarmata ministerni katimaqatiqarumallutik ikayurtorasiinnaqaruartakka allappikutigut kisiani ilangit kiungitsiammariklutik ilangit aakkaatsiammarikatarlutiungmata aittaangugaruaq inunnit aktortaummarinniartuni tusaqasuktuuyaangimmata taanna ugpornarpuq
taakkuali katimaqatigilaorpigi taikkua mittimataringmi angunasukti aqutikutaa minnoqqangaartittilorsimayu arraani
taimangani taikkua simiksimatitilortut qateqatigi laungitakka taimangani niruartauraurtillunga kisiani ila takuuteqatigiksimayugusuuqqaima peqannariik lerlutaruugatta tusarvigeqattaujarmiyakkattau maannamusui
tainna piunnaruvi kiuyunnarunni kiuyariaqangippallu qanuinnikkilluni suuqqaima takuksaukautigigannu taimanna katimayuniiqatuuruorsimalluti mittimataringmi Kanok tamakwa inuit ukakatarok tusaktaw ko pa takunangan nuruyalrikunin.
Adjigingittukku kaikiuyunnarpaqa tamanna teekanila katimavittuartuni qatauqattaroortillunga men maligaluortortuanguraungitillunga suli soqaimma kisiani piyarningittuleri yigiyaullunga ikpiartungmiunut angunasuttuleriyikkunginnut piyarningittuleri yigiyautillunga teekkununga ilauqattaraorama quyaripakkassuri teekkua angunusuktiu timingit aksuaru upinnaqattangmata inuit nipangertailimagaangami inuit nipeqarasukkaangami aksuruutiqartillugi aksuaru tusarneqaqattarakkit sivulurtittiavammaqiaruugaangami aksuaru quyarinnaqattangmata teekani avatileriyikut katimavittuartitteqattaraortillugit ainnaangoqattaraortuq tusartaaqquiqattaraungittugut nuruyaaleriyikkunnut apersortaqaruarput kiuyautiarpangillutik ammaru isumaalungnarparoorluni tukisiyaugaruarmangaatta ammaru teekkua avatileriyikut kiuyauttiaqaruarmangaatta qauyisartuiyaaqattaraungimmata imannangaaq aksorunartukkuortitauqattaraaqatta soorlu apeqsoq vigiyunnartavut pivigiyunnartavut naalligiartaungaarpaklutik uvvarunniit amisuuyunniq neqsautitauvakluti apersoqunnarneqa qayaraortavut ilaanniku soqaimma ullorput katimavittuartilluta takiyuoqattartillugit unnukkulluunni ungavariartitteqattaroorsimallutik soqaimma taakkua nunariit kiuyauraaningikkaangamit asiagut apersoqasukkaruarlutik kiuyaungiinnaraangami soqaimma apersuinnarasuqattaroormata naungila kiuyauttiaqattaraungimmata isumaalungnammaqilaortoq teekaniilluni kiuyautiarniaqaruarmangaatta taannattau peqata uqauseriartugumangmiyaqa ainnaangugutigilauttaqa avatileriyikut katimavittuartittikkannilaorsimangmata niruartauqaani simaluqtillunga nunavummiuni maligalluortertuangullertillunga teekunga katimavittuariartortunut ilaujartoriaqaruarlunga aakkaartautiammarilaurama taanna aksuaru utsernaqquyigilauttara sunavvaqai nipeqaruaqattarnerama aakkaartauni qatta rutiginnassugillugu isumaaruugillugu kisianittauq tukisinartitteqataugiaqarlunga nuvaktuarnaq nunavummiitillugu isumaaruutiqaraumata kisiani taannaugaruartillugu teekani iqarungni katimavittuartillugit tataaqattaraungittuq katimavittuang vingmi attarnartumiitittigayaruungillunga matuarsimaannaqayarlungaru ammaru kapiyau simaqattarlungauraaqama nauksuri teekunga naaragiartoquyi laorsimangittiammerittilluga aksuaru isumaalunnaluarsimayoq inungni naarattiarniaqaruarmangaatta avatileriyikku
ila iqqaumatiarpaqa taissumani katimayuniikkatta Isabel Gillu isiravit matuarsimallutin 100 ungataaniittugunalunangilluni soorluli pirayaktutitut upaktaukoortulorsimagavit qassiarjunni avaluyaullutit aniquyaullutit immaqaapingassullutit timiit kamanalaorsimayoq suurluli tammartutin hili
ittia imannattia uggornalaorsimayoq tunganangittortuaraaruullutiglu anisimatittimmariqlutik uvangatuungittorlu teemanniiliortauruortunga qaujimallunga amisut isuqtautteilitittiyaujut amisuurarmata aksuaru isimaarunnammaqilaortungilaaq inuit naarattautiarniaqaruarmangatta.
Ila ngai. Taupani iksivaarpingmi qastigasoorarmata innaillu katimayarturtuugaluat atiluortuusimangimataguuq isqunnangillutik tamanna isumaarunnarilaurivaqa tungassuttitauyuugaluakkuuq kisiani aurataullarilaurma tamanna kingullerpaami katimanirilortavu qanuq tamanna maligai tamakkua aaqiksimatillugit maliktauyareeri nunaqaqqaartunun human rights, indigenous rights. Nuniraqtausuuqallunaatitut indigenous rights takungaukku taana nunavumiimman nunagiyaktinniilluni nuluyaat taakkualu beneficiaries ilisariausimayu nunavumiutaunanginnik piyunnaarneqartitaungmata suuqaima tusariaqaratta ammalu naluneerviuttiarpakluta tukisiumayattinnik nalunaqattalaungila angiqatiginayarpinga ilainnakulungi inuqtituulertitausimalortu qastigasainnakuluit marpirtukai inuqtituulertitaugamik inuqtituulertitaulortukkuuq ikkua qaritauyamullu takkugiarasuqlugi naniyaksaungiittu taimanna ujjerilauriviu
Ilaattiaq kinguvariartausimain nagayuraortuit inuqtituuringayut tamanna aittaanguqattaraummarittoq sooqaimma innariyarpullu angunasuktiillu inuqtituurumaniksaungmata tamanna aksuaru upinnartoq inuqtituurneqsautillugit piyunnautingit saputjaugiaqammarittoq tamangmi qautamaattiaq ilaannikuutuinnangittoq maannaujoqsuri ilaannikutiinnakuruk piyunnauterput naarattauqattarmata taanna aittammariarummat qautamaanguyariaqqaqaruartillugu taanna ajortuinnariaqqartavut piyunnautivut atuinnarunnaqullutik
teima naarangneqartittiloormata qastiigasaklutik nuvangertuapitutaullumilu matuyauvakluni pigiarpakluni tamanna minister-mutuniyaullerman qastiinnakuluulerlutiklu kiuyaksangit ila kiuraarniarninga akkirpalliaqaalasarman qanukia inuit tava pilluarpat tusartaukkannirumakpata titiralluarpaat uvvalu uvva kiikartuiyinginnut nalunai talluarpat uutjersuqtugut qauyisartugut tautuktugut imailiyuqarumannerpan
kiuraan qanuiksangikuvik taanna kiuraanilaunginnernet taanna uqarimagaliaq uqausseriartugunnarpaqa
ati
avatileriyikkut piquyi vungaariorutisimangmata taima oqaqqaugama kayusequyingillutik angigligiartitauqquyinermit taanna phase 2 nguneqartaujoq kayusequyaungilluni taanna uqarimagalia juaqaaruulluni 400 makpirtugarni ungataagummariaruk piqarluni taanna utjerusuk titaukkannerpaalleriarik uqautjaurooqama suuqaimma teemaatigiaruk makpirtugaqqauqaaruptillugit taakkua uqarimaa tauyariaqartillugit isumaqsarsiukkaneriaqaqqoortugu qanuq inuit ikayuqtagukkannеруnnармангааtta taakkuninga uqarimaat gariarnit tukisittiaqaruarmangaatta tukisittiarutik angiqataukpata ammaru taakkua naarattautiaruarmangaa ammaru nillerviqarumangmangaatta minister mut kanuik sang mga titirarun na katawgia kagarang mata kisena kanukturia kamariktugut anguna sukturiyikudlo hamlekkut ammarununari kanuk ikayuktuk tawgun ng mga takwa 400 magerong mata magtaktugait teman na pitsutan na teman na isa magsaksiro tigililaw para kati-katigiyaw tiyangik kutik agtuktaw si marangoyot agsulun ni kay titira ko yigun nakota nunaringnit isuman naktok titikariyo kudlusik minister nun uban nun nunabutung ngabikun nun ammaru kikirta ni inoy katjikatigikun nun takwa tamattaw yut ila pilwaklugit nunabutung ngabikut kikirta ni inoy katjikatigikut inungnit inuit piyunaw tingin ni sapudjigya kaktidlugit naragya kadlatak tudle inungnit inuyutigot piyunaw tibut narag sapudjaw tiyaron ng nyapata tusarya kang mata inungnit ikayok te kunungat taw kay ikayok taw yumarusi kanok kiyun na mga ukarimak si maniak tuksang mga mata so kay maikanayak tukang mata ikanayak tingit kanok sapudjini ang mga ta inuy piyunaw tingin ni pitjutigilwak sugo pibadliayur riyikutigo tusak titaw katakata nuroyariyikugok nukak titiner ningin ni kanayak tingin ni tanagok akak daw si maningan no kinaw jaksayin narun ng niyang mga narun ng ningan no tana at tanang ninga udyong nakpali rutigim marilak tara inuit manaw yok nipikat kan nakpali na rekak tugot nidlurutigin na rekak tabot sa pudjityan min nakasung niyakot ta abatitin nidlo nakjutitin nidlo
Tema tana turak titigayakpata titirarumayut namukkia titirayakpan ilingnu turangarayaru ni surlo takungarlugo
uban no ngayon naktuit titirarun naktuit tana turaro tigak ikiakibikut Lori.Idlout at parl.jc.ca ammarutawk tena minister ukioktak tudarinang mut Minister Vandel mut titira katawgon nakpata tana Minister Vandel kikutoy nak titijak tuyang itidlugo aksudon ni titirak viyugo ni ukadjok tawgo ni naragyakang ninga pimariw titarakyakang niyaktabot katima katikaktaw lima tildugo at tuktaw si marango yun
Kanuklikiaktavata kwa ukakatang mata nuluyalriyikwilag 1300 ko sana yung nirayang mata 209 inulutik sana yung nirayang niraktaw yun sana yung twin na reali timan nakay sana yung twin na reali ko tema kapya sa riyu yang mata tema na ukakangaming Daw 2012 nito karo tasumina akik suibadlen mata udlimi mo tikisugo akago kuringo makikto in makapi bagayek si madluarok tugarwa ay sibudlang mate kayo sila yakpat akak daw gayakpat kanok takwa kanok daw yakete akik sumabagayakpat sana yingid uruganak tumingin naksaw na yakupan
ilat siya tema tiyak yu si mayunga pang natiyak si madyo medluarok te kanok abatiliriyikut pibadya ila kanok pikoyivungak liwayang mga ta narunarangin makongnit narirayak tuit kayo sa koying mga ubarone kayo sa koying mga takwa makotukuro tidlugit tiarsimatsuumit luaraortut aakkaartauniakaallakpata parnattiarsimangiluamut taimanna oqarasukatallertut iqqanaajartinginni noqqartittilutik angeqatigittiarlutiklu iqsisaaqasutuinnartuijaarlutik taanna aittallaarunga taimanniiliormata amissuarterlutik Inuit tusarsimagakkit qanuiksangittuugaruagu taanna nuruyaarerineq kayusikpat suuqaimma amisunit iqqanaajartittiyunnarmat inumni kissiani Inuit amisu tusarvigisimajakka oqarlutik uvatsinni pileriqatiqariaqartuit inuugatta nunagigattigu niqtutigigattigu pileriqatigiyautiarutta pileriqatigiittiarunnartugut qanuqtuuqatigiittiarunnartugut kissiani taimanna iqqanaajartini noqqartittiniangaatuinnaq niraitillugit utjornarpaallikkannerutauqquuyituinnartoq inungnit pileriqatiqattiarumangittuit inungnit ikajortiittiarumangittut Inuit piyunnautinginni ikpigusuttiangittut iili piluarlugu aakkaartaaruallaruartillugu ministermu titiqakautigiituinnattiaraormata unga angigligiartaukkannerunnarmangaat uyaranniarnermut Minister Miller ippaksa oqaqatigilauqakku unikkaarvigittiarluninga nuruyaaleriyikkunnuku oqaraortui imanna taannagu angiqtaugunnangittoq kisiani imannaittariaqarpusiguuq qikiqtani Inuit katutjiqatigiingit aayiiqatigiingaariaqartatit taakkua qikiqtani Inuit katutjiqatigiingit pileriqatigiyariaqartatit taimanniiliortoqtauraormataguuq taanna quviagilauqtaraugaruaq taimanna kiuniqartaungmata kisiani uqautilaortara taimaatigi uyaranniarnermit asitjiigiakkannerasugumakpata avatileriyikkutigууkkanneriariit saneqvait tailimagiaqartut taakkua maligait atorlugit taakkua maligaq pitchutaungmata marigarminga atorlutik avatileriyikkuorlutik kikkutuinnaartittikkanneriariit angigligiartikkannerasungaarumakpata taimanna kiurilaortara tukisigiartikkannerasuklugu pimmariuninga Inuit piyunnautingit mariksimaroortillugit kikkutuinnaarsimatittilaortillugi avatileриyikkut taakkua avatileриyikkut atortaujunnaarninga kayusiinnariaqarnerarlugu taanna pimmariaruangmat taimanna uqautittiaqassutiinaroortara uqautorlugi ajaortorlugila quyarillugi Inuit katutjiqatigikkunni aksulluunni pileriqatiqariaqarnirailaormata taanna taimanna kiunginnariaqullugu uqautilaortara
suyurlikiartava tainna takungarukku angiqtuaruppat minister qanuiliurunnarpat Inuit
apeqqutittiavallaarungma kiukautigiyinnangippasaartara assingattigoqqai aamai kiuyinnangittaqarunni maannaujoq kisiani kinguniagut qavisartiaqaaniqsimaallerorlunga kiulaaqumapagit qauyimanginnamamaana
utilaallarikkannu apeqsaaqtagisuvunitsinni
iya imannatun ila pileriaqsaqaorluni sunaavvamaligaliortortuanngorluni piyaksai amisortuaqaaruaqattarmata ullutamaaq imanna pileria asinginni pileriaqqaanningikkaangama taanna uqauserigaangakku taanna aksuruutigigaangakku maannaujoq mannatuattia pilerinasu Vutigi katarauqakku taakkua minister yuit katikatigi qullugit aktuqtausimaraanguyunit nunaqaq taakkua nunaruit katikatigiyoyumatillugit naarattaujaqaaqarninginni taana aksuutigisima kainngatuinnarauqakku kisianittauq taana avatiliqiyikkut uqarimaagarianga uqarimaaqpalliagatkusuri 200 minniituinnaruptunga maktuganganni uqarimaaqpalliatlugu taakkua ilurangit tusarniqiyakka uqarimaaqlugit upigiyakka naaratsiaraorningi sunauva utjernarninga taana quviagillugu suuqlu ayoqtui qatausimammaringmata inuiqauyimajatuqanginnikuuq atuqtuumilauqlik saqqiyaartit juumilauqlik qanuq inuiqauyimajatuqanginni atuq niarmangaatta tamakkua aksuaru tusarniqiyakkasuri kisiani nappangatuinna uqarimaaqsimallugut maannauyu taana isumagi kainnatuinnartara atiituq taimannainnaq quviaginnarniartara uqarimaaqpalliaginnartillugu
Alianai. Taimanganit makkutillunu igluringmit unataqtuksanguaqalaami ilauqsimagannu cadetsmi taissumani makkuktuuqatitit ikayuqasukpaloqsimagavigit nunarittinni ammalu ilinniarvingmit ilinniaraanikaangatta ikayuqtauyumayut ikayuqpaklugit ilinniarutinginni tamanna taimanganialuk makkungiluttaarnit inuqatingni ikayuqasuqattaqavit pikkugittiarpagi Lori.
Quyannami eqqartikkavinga makkuqqatigiilaartilluta tamakkua aksuaru quvianaroormataila aksuaru aullaqunnartitauvakklutaru asinginni nunaringni takuyunnartitaulluta tamakkua ayoqtukkannirummatuinnarpunga makkuktunit qangatuinnaq tamakkuninga atigiingittuutauyunit piliriaqsartaqaraangami ati pinayugiaqattarissi pinayulluni quvianarmat namutuinnaq aullartitauqatagunnar nasuungummat nunagijattinnu uteraangatta upinnariallakkanneq seqattarmat inuunitsinni utjernarpaalleqattarmat pikkunartuaruununga inuuneriarput
Qanuiksangikuvit piviqaruvit immaqa qallunauyalaukakkunnuk inuuqativut qallunaatituuqpikuruit taakkua tukisiumaqullugit tamanna pirtuangummat qauyimaiariaqarlutiglu suuqaimmattauq inuugami qauyimatitauiariaqarmata qanuiksangikuvit piviqaruvit qallunauyalaupallaglu
ati ittia qanuiksayaaniktuq
alianai ai qallunaatituupillannaaqatta ai ikkua inuuqativut ilangi inuktituu tukisiallutik tukisianngitsulluummata qallunaatituupillanniaqaktigut taanna uqausseqissaartavut. I'm Lucy. This is Lori Idlout, Member of Parliament. Please introduce yourself and welcome back. It's nice to see you again.
Thank you so much, Quyannami Lucy. It's always wonderful to see you. And what a nice surprise it was to see you in Igloolik, even for briefly at the airport. I have fond memories with you when we lived in Igloolik together. I'm as you said, I'm the Member of Parliament for Nunavut, and I'm very glad to be here with you today.
Thank you. In between the last time I was with Lori and now I was doing other work. And so thank you for joining us. Today's topic is to update Inuit beneficiaries and listeners in regards to what steps we are at now in regarding to the Phase 2 proposal. Mary River Mine and Nunavut Impact Review Board had declined the proposal and it's now in the hands of the minister. What can you tell us in regards to that, Lori?
So thank you for that question. It's such an important one because the way it is after the Nunavut Impact Review Board held its hearings, um, heard from Nunavut and other witnesses about the plans that were proposed by Baffinland Iron Mines. The, it was concerning as to whether Inuit would have actually been heard, having been part of the process before I became a member of parliament. So after all those hearings, Nunavut Impact Review Board has now submitted its over 400-page recommendation, 400-page report with recommendation not to approve phase 2 of Baffinland's proposal. And from the date of the submission, the Minister of Northern Affairs, who is currently Dan Vandel, had 90 days to respond to NIRB's report. And I've been working hard to make sure that the federal government hear directly from Inuit and not just to analyze the report, to hear directly from Inuit. Unfortunately, they aren't being responsive to our calls to have him meet directly with Inuit. So it's made me try and find other ways to make sure that that Inuit are heard, which is why I've been suggesting that we do some letter writing, that Inuit do some letter writing, that they write to the Minister of Northern Affairs, Dan Vandel, and include me in your emails, because I think it's important that we both understand what people feel about NIRB's report. Even though it's over 400 pages, I think it's very important that Inuit share their views about the report. Inuit need to be able to express whether they agree with the recommendations. They need to be able to analyze the report. They need to be able to talk about whether the recommendations go far enough or not. So Inuit deserve to be heard by the federal government before the federal government makes its decisions that will impact Inuit lives. So that's what I've been trying to do since NIRB's report came out.
And so, as you said, there has not been any response from the ministers. What are the next steps that you would like to do to hopefully get their attention, other than people sending letters to the minister?
I do hope that maybe people like Nunavut Tungavik Incorporated and Kikitani Inuit Association, who are there to make sure our rights as Inuit are protected, will help Inuit to make sure that their voices are heard. I hope that they will try and do some work this summer. I haven't reached out directly to QIA, but I did reach out to NTI to maybe see what we can do. One idea is maybe to hold a gathering. I don't know. We have very little time to plan before anything can really happen. So because we have such a short amount of time, the only, I think, most impactful thing that Inuit can do right now is to write to the minister about what they want done with the recommendations. Because if people don't want the recommendations to be approved, or if they want the recommendations to be approved, they have to share their views to make sure that Inuit are heard directly by the minister, because whatever the minister decides it's going to impact the lives of Inuit for generations. So we need to make sure that we are vocal as Inuit about the report and that we take the time to read. I know it's over 400 pages, but I really hope that people find a way to read the report and make their submissions to Minister Bandel and to myself so that we can all be assured that Inuit are being continually heard in this important process.
Mm. Since you became a member of parliament, I assume you have not been representing the Lord Land Guardians, and so um, what what have they done? What have they done so far to today? If they have reached out or updated you since the letter was sent to the minister.
Mm. So after I got elected, our relationship did have to change. I can't be their lawyer. I had to make my membership inactive. I can't give advice. They do still have Ann Crawford as their lawyer, which is wonderful. So when we changed our relationship, we've become friends. When I've been to Pond Inlet and to Arctic Bay, I visited their homes and spent time with them, which is wonderful. And we still talk for sure, but it's definitely not in my role as their lawyer. More as friends and as well as them being my constituent, as I have to represent all Nunavut when it comes to doing my work as a member of parliament.
And those maybe Nunavut students who may be viewing, watching the show, what does it mean to be a Nunavut beneficiary, and what rights does she or he or they have?
Inuit have rights, absolutely. The United Nations Declaration of the Rights of Indigenous Peoples is a great instrument to make sure that Inuit have rights. The Nunavut Land Claims Agreement is also a great instrument that is there to make sure that our rights are protected. There are great legal instruments that are there to make sure that we are able to protect our land as we did for time immemorial, to protect the wildlife, to manage the wildlife as we did since time immemorial. We have great, we have workable legislation within the government of Nunavut. We have workable legislation federally as well. But the two main ones that I suggest for students that are interested is to read up on UNDRIP, the United Nations Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples, as well as the Nunavut Land Claims Agreement, because they outline great protections for harvesting, for addressing our language and cultural issues.
And the minister must recognize these rights, right?
Yes, for sure, definitely. We know that, for example, with also case law, not just UNDRIP, but there's case law that supports that the federal government has obligations. The federal government has to ensure the duty to consult has been met. And so that's why you'll hear that they're doing an analysis on whether that duty has been met. And so making sure that Inuit have been heard is a very important analysis that he'll be doing. But he also has, I feel that it's very important that he hears directly from Inuit about how they feel about NIRB's report, because there's been a lot that's said in that report. Like I said, over 400 pages. I think he should hear directly from Inuit how they feel about the report and the recommendations.
So if we imagine 90 days is over let's say the minister makes up his mind and he approves it. How do you think the Inuit should be prepared if it's approved or not approved?
That is such a good question, Lucy. I think Inuit can do a lot of a better job than Baffinland did. Baffinland is showing its lack of preparation for what NIRB ultimately recommended, because they are making threats that Inuit will be laid off, that employees will be laid off. So it's obvious to me that they weren't prepared for any outcome that would have happened from NIRB. So what Inuit can do is be prepared for either way that the minister will decide. Inuit should discuss in each community what potential outcome the minister will say, whether he supports NIRB's recommendation or not. I think Inuit have the chance right now to ensure that they are prepared for what the minister will decide. But at the same time, I think that it's incumbent upon all of us to write directly to the minister to make sure that he hears from Inuit how we feel about NIRB's recommendations. I think it's important that people realize that the work is not done yet, that we still have some work to do, that we still have some advocacy to do, that if the minister is going to make an informed decision, that we have to give him the information from Nunavut, from Inuit, about how they feel about the recommendation.
The word threat, I think, is quite alarming because it's been 10 years, 2012 up to 2022. And I agree that the Mary River should have been more prepared and not threat the 1,300 employees that they may lose their jobs and 209 Inuit. And so the word threat is it's attention, alarming. I and I don't think it's right that it feels like it's a threat because, as you say, they should have been more prepared. So, do you think that Inuit would be the last employees to be let go, to be laid off out of the 1,300 employees?
I don't think so. It is very well known that the life of the mine can take more, will potentially take more generations. It is well known that there is a huge I don't know what, there's a huge bank of iron that still needs to be extracted. So I don't think Baffinland's threats to lay off Inuit can be substantiated. The price of iron ore is at an all-time high. There are as well. It is also important to remember that by deciding to take this approach to threaten the lives of their staff, that they're choosing profits over their labor. They're choosing to focus all their revenues on their to give to their shareholders, to making sure that they can keep their staff. Secondly, they seem to be choosing not to want to work with Inuit. They seem to be saying that by threatening to lay off their employees, that they don't want to seek the advice of Inuit. Inuit have been extending they've been saying they'll work with Baffinland. Inuit have been saying that they are willing to work with Baffinland to keep the project going. And by them choosing to use the report to not have phase 2 approved, to try and apply directly to the minister to be able to extract more, at the same time saying that they're going to lay off people, just goes to show how unprepared they have been and how unwilling they are to work with Inuit. So we need to take these messages very seriously and discuss in our communities how we could make sure that these major corporations that are profiting in the millions and billions from our lands, that they work better with Inuit. And Inuit have not shut them off. Inuit have always said they want to work with them. And it's really unfortunate that they're choosing to take this kind of route instead of working with Inuit.
Tukisirvagi. I understand what you're saying, Lori.
Mm-hmm.
I would love to get back to our Inuktitut conversation when I said earlier that the last time we attended the hearings, I was attending the hearings. It was with Isabel Gil. I was representing NITV, sitting at the meeting in Iqaluit, and I see you come in, and 3 people approach you as if you had done something wrong. And there were less than, obviously, 100 people in the conference room, and 100 was the maximum due to the COVID restrictions. And I thought that it was such a powerful sight as a beneficiary to see a Nunavut beneficiary to be told to leave.
Mm-hmm.
And after all, you were the voice of the land guardians. And would you like to tell us a little bit about that? What happened that day at the conference room during the NIRB hearings?
Mm-hmm. That was definitely a shocking experience. It heightened my concerns about whether Inuit would be heard. I was very concerned that NIRB was using their power inappropriately. I had shared with them that as an elected official, that I'm exempted from the restrictions. I was also wearing my mask. I also had been vaccinated, I told them. So it was very shocking experience to be excluded from the hearings, knowing that there was less than 100, knowing that the capacity of how many would be allowed was not met. And I had since then always planned to make sure that once the recommendation comes out, that I would talk about whether the duty to consult would be met given these kinds of restrictions that were being, I think, overreaching very much, because I know that I wasn't the only one who was excluded from these proceedings. I know that there were other Inuit that were excluded from these proceedings. So it just heightened my concern very much as to whether Inuit were being heard. And it made my anticipation for the report to come out that much more stressful, that's for sure.
When I came to check on you shortly after you were asked to leave, there were about 4 of you Nunavut beneficiaries outside, 2 of whom were elders. And I thought that was concerning, as you stated that. And I asked the elders why they're not allowed to go in. And they said that they were registered to be part of the conference, but because their name had not been put into the list, they were not allowed to go in. So, looking at that as an example, do you think consulting Inuit and informing Inuit is being followed by the Mirror River and the Nunavut Impact Review Board, the NTI, the QIA?
I think we have to remember that it happened during very extraordinary times, because it was right during the COVID pandemic, and there was so much fear and lack of understanding about COVID-19. So I think that would not have happened if COVID-19 was not around. I think that we would have been able to enter without any problems, unfortunately, if it weren't for COVID-19. I still remember that the information about COVID was very misunderstood. We didn't know a whole lot, and all we knew were that many people were getting sick, that people were dying. And so I chose to take that more seriously at that time, and to instead do what I can to help make sure that we're not part of the spread of COVID-19 in our community. I ended up just choosing to look at it that way and find ways to make sure that Inuit were being heard. Finding other ways, yeah.
Kuya nami, ilagay ako mayakarovit ako na nga ukausakisakatinig. Ukausakingita nilunia, bikotingita nilunit. Bibikakti pagilori.
Kuya nami, ayok to yung makituin nakpunga inu katikput. Tusaktaw yung magpata. Amisunod, tusaktaw gyakon ng mata. Soglo, angon na sukturiyik kunnot. Hamlet kunnot. Kikita ni Inuit katigik kunnot. Nunavut tungabik kunnot lo ni amaro uvanot. Amisuyugot. Kikaktuite ako magata inungnit. Tusakbiyo yung naktuit. Kanutuin nak. Niriuktugot. Tusako mayugot. Kanok ikpigusong mangata. Tana ukarimaga riyaw rock tumit. Piko yibong ako tiyo rock tumit. Aksoro. Tusako mayugot. Amarutaw. Tekwa. Ikanayak tiyo yut. Mana. Nuruyarigik kunot. Aita ngugarate maneliok tayo kasi. Kiseni, piyun na uti kakarang mayusi. Piyun na uti giyasi. Sakutyaw yun na kumaguti kakaya kaktusi. Nipi kakaya kaktusi. Nipay telegasi. Kikaktuk tayo yung naktusik suri. Kikitanik kuno upagsigya kaktusi. Kikaktuk tayo yung magusi. Ikanaya si asyoyigya kang ikarwa kasyo. Nuroya rigikut imaneliok tilagit.
Takwa ikanayakti kikitanik kunot titirakum naktun. Aglabingan nulunit ukarugun naktut. Kisianiti tikak sanginak sa katang makawi mayawri. Ukausik sanginak kaptugalwa. Titirak si magpat hilisakayaw naksaw naman. Tavavuti ako maguvi ilatin inugasarum no.
Kilamero ikakangukot sikak to kata. Naitukuro yakto o katagbigasak tabot. Kuyan na midlaro lo si nagligap chok pagit. Nunavumyo tao katik katamang mitya tavavuti umayaka. Ilagkapilwak sugit. Tavavuti tiyak pagka. Atong ne okakuma puigwelwang nera ma amisurak tunit atong ne okangikarok ang kasianik tamami nunavummiu quyarivassi uvannineruarsilauqassi aksuruutiqainnarniarpunga ayortuinginnaqattarniarpunga innui piyunnautingit ikpigijauqullugi.
Pikkugivagit. Arianait marigarirtua marigariortirtuarigattigi nunavumi.
Ila quyannami.
Pinasuarusiununguani taqersittiarniarputit ulluqattiaquvagillu.
Ikvittau atiituq taqeqsittiaqainnarniarputittau.
Quyannami. Tavataana Lori Idlout maligaliortirtuakkunnut kikartuiujunnunnavumin taanna pikkugittiamarittara ikayuqattarma inuuqatinginnik tusaumatittiqattarumaruormat tafuuna uvagut qitsallugungatsigut utiqattarniartugut tainna tusartaunasumniluktaangani aperilauqattarniarakku minister nillerpat qanuilingalaarmangaan akirpallianingani tusaumatiqattarniaqattikit quyannamiiqpunga Lucy Tulugarjuyunga tamaani Montrealmit Lori Idlout tauvani titiqarpinganni ulluqattiaritti.
Bye.
Bye, Lori. Have a good weekend, everyone. Thank you for tuning in. I'm your host, Lucy Tulugarjuk, and our special guest, Lori Idlout, MP for Nunagijavut. Thank you for tuning in. Good day.
Inge ayar